Good evening, and welcome to SlushHeap number 9. This is book signing. It should be very interesting tonight. We have a couple of return guests that have been with us before, including one other new one, which we're really kind of anxious to talk to for a little bit. I understand he's quite a character. So let me introduce everybody, starting from the left. Alana Terry. She was with us before. Unfortunately, her microphone at the time had a bug in it, and we had to actually learn sign language that night. So tonight she does have it fixed, and we'll hear her actual voice. No, it is not pre-recorded. It is live. Next to her is Amy Neftzger. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Amy's been with us as well, and nice having both of you back again.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can ask some better questions this time. I'm just kidding. Some new questions, I should say. And next to Amy, we have our new guest, Cory Basil. And I wish I knew a little bit more about Cory. The only thing I can see that I'm going to really go after is one of his books that he wrote recently is Skinny Dipping in Daylight. I got to attack that topic, I'm telling you. That's right down my alley, it seems like, you know. So look forward to that, talking to you about that, Cory. Of course, next is Darcy. She is the beauty. I'm the beast. Next to Darcy, we have Jim Auld, a friend of the show. Jim is more and more becoming our technical advisor. And we're learning so much that, you know what, my head is going to explode shortly if I keep listening to him. So I'm going to let Matt do that. Next to Jim is John Rakestraw, another friend of the show, and always nice to have him back because he's my kind of man. He's a teller of stories, and to heck with writing it down. You know, that's the way to do it, John. We'll just tell it, right?
That's right.
You can get so much more said that way. Then of course skip me, and then we have Matt Frost. Matt is our technical man, and we missed him last week. You know, I don't understand how a family affair could be at a higher priority than this show, but you know, we had to let him go, unfortunately. So
Sorry,
it's nice to have you back, Matt. Okay, so having said all that, let's begin. And I guess, Darcy, it's up to you to begin this whole show in earnest.
All right. Well, I like the fact that you did the introductions tonight so that you could throw me at the first question. That was well thought out, Rudy. I want to invite everyone tonight. I think that this is going to be a great show. It's a topic that a lot of authors have a lot of questions about. Book signings are kind of one of the first things that new authors think about when they've written something. And yet, there's a lot of confusion behind them, and I have noticed more and more often authors today just choose to ignore them completely. And I'm going to actually start off the show a little bit different tonight, not by introducing our guests right off the bat, but by talking to John Rakestraw, one of our friends of the show. Today, publicly, I asked John Rakestraw about his opinions on book signings, and I thought that what he said was a great introduction. So I'm going to kind of have him repeat that if he doesn't mind.
Put me on the spot. Well,
That's right.
that's good. I like that, Darcy. Very good. I look at book signings nowadays in this new era where we have a lot of digital books. We also have a lot of new authors, a lot of indie authors, a lot of self-published authors. It's a hard thing to do. First of all, it's hard to do a book signing for an ebook. And a huge amount of the books being produced right now by indie authors are ebooks. So it's hard to sign an ebook. There's software out there. There's a whole setup you can go through to get that to happen. But it's hard to do, and you know, it's a mess. On the other side, having to go and get a bunch of books together and then go to a bookstore, set up, you know, when you don't have a name value, you don't have a huge readership, can be somewhat embarrassing and humiliating because you'll get there and nobody shows up. You've been sitting there at your table, you have your little sign, and you're ready to go, and nobody really comes to want a book from you, which doesn't mean that you don't have a good book, but it means that you don't have the following. Now, on the other side, there's this other part that we have to think about, and that is what we can do to make book signings work. And I think that's the part, is that it's the networking. It's the ability to have something go on with it. Recently, I just read about how this cake wrecks. I don't know if you've seen them. They go out and have people take pictures of awful cakes done by professionals, and they put them up. And they had a book signing go on. And what they did, though, is they incorporated these great things at the book signings, and that was bring a cake wreck there, show a bad cake, or have a contest with making cupcakes. They had a reason to generate a buzz wherever they at. People brought in their cakes, but also on the other side, they have a huge following, so it was easy to do. And we're not Stephen King, and Stephen King actually doesn't do book signings much anymore because he would get mobbed. But on the other side, there are guys out there like Tim Butcher, who does the Dresden Files. He has a lot of book signings he does, and a lot of things. He goes to all the Comic-Cons to keep himself in the public eye. But me and Rudy, let's just say me and Rudy decided we were going to go out and do a book signing tour together. I was going to jump in his RV, and we were going to hit a couple of good spots. I think most of them would be the Indian reservations because, hey, we could gamble and have a good time. But we would set this up. We would get there, we'd set up our table, and hopefully somebody would give us some money so we could gamble with it. But we don't have a following as big as that. So we have to, sit there, beg, borrow, steal. I would say I'm Stephen King, and people would probably even fall for it for at least 45 minutes, maybe. But see, that's the problem, is we don't have the following. So our book signing something of the past for us because of indie books and because it's an old concept. We don't have as many of the wonderful bookstores out there as much as we used to. We do have some major bookstores. Here in Portland, we have Powell's, so that's a great place to go. In different types of states, they have other giant independent bookstores, and trying to get into someplace like Barnes and Noble or something is a little harder. Borders you can't at all unless you find one that's open. Just,
Sure.
And Amy, you're kind of in line with this, if I understand correctly. Now, I didn't hear this firsthand, but I heard the secondhand that you kind of are against book signings for your own purpose.
For myself, I don't, and I've done book signings and I've gotten people there. I just don't feel like it's a good use of my time. And the book signing that I did, you have to have a certain level of celebrity. People want to connect with you. And what I find with my readers in general, while most people are moving over to e-readers, my readers, they tend to like paper books. They prefer hardcovers. They tend to read a little bit higher level literature. They love the classics because I have a slightly more literary style. And they don't really care as much about me. They just care about my work. So they'll order my book, and a lot of times they'll order it through third-party sources, but like they can get a signed copy of my book from the website, from Fog Inc. But a lot of times they just want the book and they want it fast, so they'll order it from Amazon where they've got Prime or something like that.
Right. Now, what do you do as opposed to book signings then?
I mentioned I have done them before, and when we did it, what we did is I wrote a children's book called All That the Dog Ever Wanted, and Borders actually helped me with that. They set up a book tour. That's when they were still open, and their marketing manager worked that in, and they coupled it with a program where children read to dogs to make them get more comfortable reading. And so they had the dogs in the store too. So they had set up a bunch of these events where I did that. And I think if you connect with your readers, setting it up with events where there are other things going on, like we were just talking about, I think that helps a lot. One of the other things that I've done that I feel like was more valuable is I went out to elementary schools and read the book to children there and let them ask me questions and interacted with them. Some of them were interested in how do you become a writer. Some of them just wanted to know about, do I have a dog, off-topic things. But I felt like that was a lot more valuable than a book signing. They didn't care if my book was signed. They cared that I was there reading to them.
Right. And that's actually one of the questions I was going to ask tonight, and I guess I'll just throw it out there now. Do a lot of you do book readings in conjunction with book signings when you do that? Cory, Alana, does anyone?
I've never done a book reading. I do have one kid's book, a short chapter book, and I really like Amy's idea about going into the schools. I thought I would pursue that this fall once things start up again. So I guess I'd love to hear, Amy, how you got yourself into those schools to do the readings.
You know what? I'm not completely sure. It was my marketing person who set that up. But if you start making contacts, sometimes if you know, I'm sure you could probably call up the schools yourself and let them know that you're a local author, or even if you're traveling somewhere and there's a school that's the appropriate age group, just offer yourself. Tell them you'll do the reading for free. And a lot of times they want a guest speaker, you know, who can teach the kids. So
Right.
Particularly if it works in, I've noticed for a lot of authors, it's particularly true if your book works in with what their lesson plan is. So they'll actually have you, and I think that your book would probably work really well with the educational system. Do you want to tell people about your book a little bit? Since, you know,
The kids one, is that what we're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah. So I got a copy. Can you see? This is called What No Sushi. It's the first book. There's at least 3 that are in contract. It's a new time travel historical fiction series, kind of like Magic Treehouse. It's about the same grade level. It's about 3 boys whose dad invents a machine for them to go back and explore their family's roots. So this book is based on some of our own personal family history. The 3 boys go and visit their great-grandma as a little girl when she was sent to a Japanese-American internment camp during World War II. So that's what this one's about.
Excellent. And that's why I said I think that, you know, with the history element, it would probably fit really well. So
yeah.
Great. Now, Cory, what about you? Have you done book readings with your book signings?
Yeah, I do some poetry readings coupled with book signings, and for me, I think they're very important. I'm one who likes a lot more one-on-one with someone who's interested. I like to have that kind of, you know, build rapport, kind of like a little bit of a surface relationship with someone, and not just here's an autograph, thanks, see you later, but, you know, try to connect and see where they're coming from. And, you know, that's something that fuels me as a writer as well and as an artist, is that connectivity with someone, just kind of seeing behind the eyes of someone else when they open up to you. And, you know, a lot of my poetry is very vulnerable, hence the title of the book. And with that comes a responsibility, because people will open up to you and more than they would open up to anyone else in their life, just because you tapped into something. So for me, it's important to be out and among and to do the signings and the readings. And I really enjoy doing the readings because it's not something that's commonplace right now. And so for you to stand up in front of an audience and to start reading poetry, it's kind of invasive at first. People just kind of, you know, stagger back a little and kind of look around. They're a little uncomfortable, but by the time you're, you know, 10, 15, 20 minutes in, everybody is fully locked and fully engaged. And it's a very exciting thing to see happen, even more so for me than performing on stage doing music. It's kind of, it's its own different kind of intimacy.
That's great. That's great. Actually, one of the questions I was going to ask you, I noticed on your blog I was reading earlier today that you said that you would consider yourself a bit of an introvert, sorry. And
oh, yeah.
I was wondering how that impacts you when you do book signings and book readings and things like that.
I mean, it's a lot of just kind of putting myself aside and realizing that, you know, I'm in the position to do what I do, and so it doesn't really matter what I think or how I would like to protect myself, which is to say that, like I said on the blog, that I prefer to just sit in a cave and throw my art out the door when it's done. But that's not how it works in society. You have to connect. You have to be out there. You have to be engaging at least some part of the time. And the funny thing about being an introvert is that, you know, over the last few years, I've gone through times where I just don't want to be out and about at all. I just want to be locked away creating. But the beauty with interactions with human beings is that that's where the inspiration comes from. So as much as you want to be an introvert as a creative, you need that fuel of one-on-one with somebody or group settings, and you need the observation. The observationist to be out there.
So I'm just curious, is that like a cycle then? Do you go through cycles of introversion and cycles where you spend time with other people?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of cyclical, but it's cyclical because it's something that I have to do, that I do on purpose. That I know, okay, I've got to get out there. I've got to get myself out there. I need more fuel, that kind of thing.
But then you retreat, don't you? Like to write also?
Oh yes, absolutely, yeah. But even in that, like that's where my inspiration comes from. So Sorry, there's a UPS truck and a bus giving us extra noise. Yeah, it's it's very yin and yang. I think that I need mixtures of both to be healthy. One, to be creative. Two.
Now, first, before I say anything more, I'll throw it out there. Does anyone have any questions on that topic that they'd like to ask?
Well, the only thing that I would add to that, and it's strange listening to this, especially the book reading, I really like that idea. Now, me having said earlier that I'm not an author per se, I'm a teller of stories, I've been through that route where before the book was even written and as it was being written, I would go into the high schools because of my material was more geared towards high school kids that had it in history at the moment, let's say. And a lot of the teachers, once they got the word that I was willing to go and speak to classes, they'll invite you in. And they'll tell you what day, in my case, what day they were talking about the Cold War or the Vietnam War. So I would go in and I didn't read from anything. I told strictly the same story that I told Darcy that she put on paper. But let's go back for a minute. We're talking about earlier about a lot of the books now are ebooks. So John or anybody, is there a solution to the person? Now, let's face it, I could still have a reading even though I have an ebook. I can go in with my manuscript, my final copy, and have a reading to somebody. Is that the only solution we have left?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. There are some interesting ideas. One is I read where you would get like postcards made up that actually had, like if you were with, let's say, Smashwords is one of the ideas. And Smashwords has the ability for you to have a coupon number. And you could put on that postcard a coupon number. If they would pay you the amount of the book there, then you could sign that card, hand them that, and they could take that and then get their book off of Smashwords for whatever price you paid, or if it's for free, you just give them a coupon code. That's one way to do it. There are ways to set up where you can actually sit there and sign their book electronically. There are a couple of programs out there. They're not easy to use and they're not easy to set up, and it's still a little weird that you're signing an electronic signature that will now be passed over as a graphic to where their book is. There are things like that.
Well, that's saying that it's important that we have that signature. And as Amy said, in her case, she really doesn't care whether they want the signature, as long as they want the book. So Correct. It's the same thing with us. I mean, can we go into either a book club and instead of handing them 20 manuscripts, which we talked about with your wife, because that's really all I have, or can I go in and say, okay, when you do read it to them, do you read the whole book to them, or do you read them just excerpts from it to get their taste buds kind of going? Anybody? Amy?
Yeah.
I think it really depends on how long the book is. Something that just popped into my head, if there are authors that are watching this broadcast right now, something that might be useful is if you had a version of your, if it's just an ebook, if you had a version that had maybe some extra material and you had it under a separate ISBN and they got that for coming to the reading, okay. They would get a special code to access that or something like that. I think a lot of times what they want is something extra from the writer, something that gets them inside the process or that makes them connect with the writer a little bit more. And like I said, in my experience, they don't really care about having my signature. They do care about having my books, the writing. If I published a short story for free, I think they would download it, So I think if you can provide them with some sort of value for being at the event, I think that's what they're after.
Okay. Well, Alana, that kind of answers your question in a way, too, because you're wondering how you can get into the schools. And I'm telling you, if you go to the local school and ask them, they're more than happy to have you.
Right.
Especially the age group that your book is meant for.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an avenue for you, definitely.
Yeah.
Alana, was it your children's book that you just had the book signing for?
I did, yep. Yesterday we set something up. I've done book signings for all of my books. Ours have mostly been in non-traditional settings. This one we did was probably the closest we came to a traditional book signing, but we just set up at a frozen yogurt lounge locally. The publishing company that published What No Sushi focuses on homeschool fiction, and so I let a bunch of our homeschool groups around town know about it, and also put some things up in the newspaper and, you know, e-events kinds of things online. So what I did was people could come in, get a book, and if they got a book, I gave them a little coupon for $1 off the frozen yogurt there. And so they were able to come in, check out the book, and then stay and hang out and get frozen yogurt and stuff.
So everybody gained.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So
I think that's great. The gimmick, the idea of having a gimmick seems to be something that makes it more successful for people, which I think is something that's important for new authors to understand. Now, Cory, have you done that in the past on some sort of gimmick?
Well, yeah, I guess gimmick would be the word, but I've given out prints of my art with the book when the book was released. Skinny dipping, there's a frontispiece on the inside, and I gave that out to everyone that came to the show or bought a book. So.
Darcy, didn't Slash last week talk about how he was doing that too? Like he was gonna go up to Maine. He was gonna do something on fishing and hunting because of that, and also the different areas he was gonna go to. One was about fathers and how fathers and sons work together. So even he was talking about how he had I wouldn't say a gimmick, but more of a purpose, of a theme for each of his book signings that was different, and that was interesting that he had that. I think that's one of the reasons that book signings can work, is that if you have some theme. I don't like the word gimmick. It sounds more like, okay, I'm going to sell you some snake oil, but a theme sounds better to me. Have a theme. I'm going to have a murder mystery when I put out my murder mystery book. I'm going to have a I'm going to take you, with my book, Titanic Deception. I'm going to take you on a cruise. Hopefully, you'll make it home.
Right. So what do you suggest I do in my book then?
Oh, take us all to China and show us how to be a spy. Come on,
There you go.
Or
you want to go find Mr. Snow, right? Mr. Snowden.
Yeah, that's it. Ooh, that's right, Mr. Snowden. Yeah.
Mr. Snowden.
Is he still hiding in China? Is that where he's hiding? Yeah.
Well, someplace in China right now. Well, Cory, I noticed that, and it didn't really, just now it dawned on me. I looked at what you wrote back on the questionnaire about the books that you have worked on, and one of them is The Orphanage of Miracles, and I thought, geez, I know about that. Now, I know I didn't read it yet. Then I realized that it actually is a book that belongs to somebody else in here.
That's correct.
Am I right, Amy?
Yes.
So the two of you knew each other already.
Yes, well, we're with the same publisher, and that's how I met Cory. And
Very good.
He illustrated The Orphanage Miracles, which just came out less than a month ago.
Very good. I ordered it. I'm looking forward to that finally showing up so I can send it back to you to have that
I noticed you didn't order the autographed copy, did you?
I just ordered the book, but I want to get it autographed. Yeah, I told you it's going behind me here on my wall of fame. Everybody that we have on the show.
Would you rather have a yogurt coupon?
Yeah, yogurt coupon. I can have one of them. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll
I have to be there in person to get it. But I guess what I have to do with Cory, I have to give one of your art pieces and hang that up behind me.
Absolutely, we can make that happen.
That's signed, of course, signed.
Of course, it'll cost you extra, but I'll sign it.
That's okay. Cost it's not a problem at all. As long as Darcy says it's okay, I can have
it. Good deal.
So, anyhow, go ahead, Darcy.
No, actually, I'm curious. This is a little off topic, but Cory, are you still doing artwork for books now? Is that something that you're going to pursue?
Yes, I'd like to get a little bit more into that. It's going to be a juggling contest, with everything I have coming up with new books, and I am going to do Amy's next book as well. So it just depends on what we can slide in there, but that's definitely an avenue I want to go down is illustrating for other authors.
And he just illustrated his own children's book, too.
That's right, I did. See, I told you I'm not good about talking about myself and my own stuff.
That's okay. Actually, I saw that on Amazon. It's ready for pre-order now, correct?
I don't know if it's up for pre-order yet. Or not.
You can pre-order from Amazon. I don't think it's on the Fog Ink website, but it should go up on Fog Ink soon, I think. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what they do there.
Okay, I saw at least the cover art for it on Amazon, so people can see at least that, see the cover that you designed, and it's beautiful.
Yes, yeah, and that comes out October 1st, and that's The Perils of Fish Boy.
Perils of Fish Boy. I like your titles. Where do your titles come from?
This crazy spot above my eyes. That's all I can say. I don't know. They just kind of come to me, and I write them down before I lose them.
That's great. That's great. Now, one of the things that I wanted to make mention of is that both, I think Cory was there as well, but Amy was definitely at Book Expo this year. And
Right, yeah.
you were both there. And I'm just wondering how you think something like that compares to a traditional book signing as far as, promoting yourself.
Amy, I'll let you go first.
Well, for me, it was a lot more valuable being at Book Expo because, like I said, I don't think people are after my signature on my books. Being there met with the advantage of being at Book Expo America is you're with a lot of publishing professionals. So I got to meet a lot of different agents and other people, other authors. Some other authors that I connected with had some great advice. Just so many different people in publishing and things that I had not thought of before, and I have been doing this for 10 years. So I felt like that was a really good experience.
I think that it can be very, very hit or miss with author signings at the Book Expo, because you walk, just on taking exercise strolls, you walk past that autograph row, and some lines authors I've never heard of are just out the door with people with the book in hand ready for an autograph. Other lines, they have staffers with the copy trying to shove them down people's throat to get them in line to sign with their author.
And mind you, these books are free. They're giving them away.
Yeah.
But
I think it's very hit or miss. Like I met a gentleman there who was also an illustrator, and this was his first book out the gate, and he had a signing at his publishing booth, and no one had ever heard of him before, but yet he had a line of 100 people that got his book and signed it. So I think that free helps. I think that giving out a free book there definitely helps because, if it's enticing and intriguing looking, someone's going to want to know the magic behind it and who created it. And if that person is there, that makes it that much more special that, oh my gosh, I can meet the guy or the girl that created this product that I have in my hand. So I think that helps as well.
That's great. Now,
John, do you have a question?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I do. I wanted to ask Alana about how she set up the book signings that she did. She said she's done it with several of her books. How was it set up, and how did she get it all put together? I think that'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, well, like Cory was saying, I'm mostly introverted. I'm definitely shy, so doing cold calls and things like that to ask for signing is really, really hard for me. It takes me a good week or two to psych myself up. What I've done with the book I mentioned, the kids' book, What No Sushi, is approached the homeschool bookstore here in town. Since I'm a homeschool mom, we already have a relationship, the lady there and I. And so I talked to her. We're going to hopefully do something maybe in August or September when everyone's doing their back-to-school shopping. Most of the other ones I've done have been more like get-togethers with people I know and less like formal book signings out in the public. So, for example, when I wrote my memoir about my son who has some special needs, it was published right around the time that he turned 5 and was told that he could finally start eating some food by mouth instead of needing to use his feeding. So we threw a huge Chuck E. Cheese party, and we invited probably 25 different families we knew who all had kids. The gimmick there was you buy a book. Well, you don't buy a book. You show up and you get, tokens and pizza. And we turned it into a party, but what we did was we had copies of the book there for sale. I did the same thing when I published Beloved Daughter. I was turning 30 in April, which was when it was published, and so I threw myself my first birthday party in a decade and had books there. So for me, the book signing in most cases has been a chance for me to get together with people I know and offer it to them. What I'm trying to do now is to do things that are a little bit more out in the public, like what I did at the Frozen Yogurt Lounge. But that's been a lot harder for me to get off my butt and do it because it's a little frightening for me to make those calls and stuff.
You see, that's strange. It's something that John and I wouldn't know how to answer that because, I think we don't have that problem. If somebody
I'm very shy.
looks at us, we start talking, right, John?
I'm very shy. I don't. Yeah. My kids get mad at me because I'll talk to people while standing in line at the grocery store. Yeah, my kids are, Dad, you don't know them. What are you doing? I said, now I know them.
I seem to have problems at Home Depot when I go to buy things and women come over and ask me questions. My kids go nuts. What do you think Mom's thinking? She's at home and here you're flirting. I'm not. I'm just talking. So, but that's interesting. So we have
worked in retail for. Yeah, I worked in retail for quite a while, and I used to get people who I think just saw me because I worked at another store, and walk into another store, and I was wearing my tie, and sometimes I forget to take my name tag off, and you'd be asked, so where is such and such in this store? And I'd go, I think it's back on aisle 15. And it was on aisle 15. I did know the store. If I didn't know, I would tell them. I go, I don't work here, and they go, well, you have a name tag, and I'd go, oh. Let me see if I can find someone for you. But I could see that being creative people typically, surprisingly, are very introverted. They do it through their art. They bring out their wonder through a separate. My wife is very much an introvert, and she was a major, wonderful actress. She was really good, actually. She always got leads and everything, but she is not someone who likes to get in front of people. She doesn't like. It's hard to pull her in and do a show like this. She gets embarrassed. She doesn't. So I can understand that. I'm not a performer per se. I'm a personality, so that's a little different. That's what Rudy and I are. That's why it's easier for us to go and do this. Is that we're personalities. We're not trying. It's just who we are. We'll talk about anything with anybody. Right. We're going to be two old guys sitting there, in the street corner yelling at the birds. We know that.
Yes.
Matter of fact, we sort of look like those two guys from the Muppets, don't we?
Yes. And you
know
what?
Put those pictures up next show. You do realize that.
And I'll tell you right now, I don't know how John feels, but if you want to hear me talk, all you gotta do is keep quiet for 2 minutes. The talk is I can't stand silence.
Dead air. Dead air is awful. Dead air.
Right?
So yeah, I can completely relate with these guys because it took Rudy. How long did it take you? Probably 5 or 6 months to talk me into doing this show, just because I'm the same way. I'd rather hide. I have to be on camera. I can't do it. But
and look what we made out of her.
Yeah, I think it's helped a lot to actually be on the show, and actually it makes me wonder with Cory, do you have the same problem when you're performing music?
Actually, with music, it's quite different. I think that music feeds a different part of the ego, and so for me, anytime that
Oh, we lost you, Cory.
Can you hear me
you're
now?
muted for some reason.
There you are.
Back again.
I was checking your lip reading. That's what I did. Lip reading ability. No, I was just saying
that.
I think with music, it's a different animal. I think it feeds a different part of the ego, and there's something that happens when I go on stage and I perform in front of people. I want everyone to pay attention to me, and I want all eyes on me as I'm doing what I'm doing. It's like a different persona. And then as soon as I walk off the stage, I don't want to talk to anybody. So it's totally, it's kind of inexplainable, but you do kind of, don a different character when you take a stage musically, and there's, the music and the electricity and the energy from the audience. It's a totally different animal, which is why since I've moved away from that into, doing exhibits with my art and now as an author doing signings and readings, it's much more vulnerable for me, and it's much more intense for me to have to psych myself up and be like, okay, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to stand in front of my art and I'm going to talk to strangers for 2 hours about it. It's a totally different ballgame.
And I think maybe part of that is that when you go out and you perform your music, you kind of know what to expect, whereas something like this, you don't know what kind of questions are going to be thrown at you.
Yeah,
I would say, especially with art showing.
Yeah, there's a barrier and a wall with music. I mean, it's all personified, but yeah, with art, somebody comes up to you, and a lot of, the first probably 5 or 6 exhibits I would have people ask me very, very vulnerable questions just because I put my art on the wall, they think that I should answer that. Like,
Yeah.
for example, like a lot of my art is kind of playful whimsy, but very macabre with like a lot of heartbreak sewn into it. And I had somebody come up to me and say, "Why are you so sad? What's wrong with you?" Like, just at an art show in front of everybody. So it's stuff like that makes it totally different than when you're performing music.
It's true.
Well, not to go off the subject, but you just brought it up. When you're up in front of an audience in a musical venue like that, is it true that because of the lighting, you don't even see the audience? You just have to feel their energy, or can you see them?
No, you can see.
I think it depends on the size of the venue.
Depends on the size of the venue. Yeah, I mean, I've played for 10,000 people and I could still see the room. I think it just depends on the setup and the amount of stage lights right in your face.
Because I know my psychiatrist told me that if I had that problem, just to imagine they were all naked, and then I would be okay.
Isn't that public speaking?
That's what I do. I don't sing. Believe me, I don't sing anymore. No. I do public speaking.
Good deal.
Now, Amy, do you feel like do you think that it's because of the questions that people ask you that you feel a little shy in doing your meet and greet with the public, or?
No, I'm an introvert by nature, but I have done public speaking, and something that I don't even think most people know, but I've been on stage before too. I play several instruments, and I've actually been on stage at the GEC here in Nashville. What's it called now? The Bridgestone Arena. I keep forgetting. So I'm okay being in front of people. It just depends on what sort of I've spoken at conferences, where there were several thousand people there. I'm okay with that. The one-on-one for me is a little bit more difficult, actually, than being, just because when you're speaking to a group, typically you have a script, you know what you're going to say, you've got everything planned out, you might have slides, they're looking at the slides. When you're playing music, I usually play in a group, I'm not the lead singer, so they're not looking at me, and they're paying attention to the music, not to me so much. So I'm okay with those sorts of things. It's the one-on-one where you have to make conversation, and I don't know anything about that person or where they're coming from, that it makes it very awkward.
Yeah, that's true. Now, is there anything that you would recommend to people who feel the same way you do, that have, are approaching their first book signing or their first, exposure?
The best thing you can do is get the other person to talk about themselves somehow. Just if they're wearing a scarf that you like, or ask them what brought them there. Find a question that you can get the other person to answer. Ask them if, are they local? Did they come into town? Things like that. Usually they'll get the other person talking, and then they'll start engaging in conversation.
That's excellent. That's actually really good.
That's a good point. Very good point.
Alana, do you kind of do the same thing in your approach, or?
Well, I'm kind of like Amy. I don't mind the actual doing of it. I don't mind the talking. I enjoy meeting people. I don't mind the questions. Although the one question that kind of bugs me with Beloved Daughter, it's my novel set in North Korea. I've been asked probably 9 out of 10 people who see it want to know if I'm Korean, which I'm not. But I guess it's a natural question. I don't mind that. I think the hardest part for me is just getting it set up, making the phone calls. I don't know why it is. I guess I feel really embarrassed on the phone. I don't know quite what to say. If they can't hear me, I've got a bad cell phone with bad coverage, so I have to end up repeating myself. It's things like that that make me real nervous. Once I'm there, I really enjoy it. If I have a problem, it's probably that I come home hoarse from talking. But yeah, for me, it's just getting things set up that's the intimidating part.
So once you're there, I think this is a question that I'd like to throw to everyone, but we'll start with you. Once you're there, how do you set yourself up for a book signing?
Do you mean the physical space? Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, okay. What I did was I got a couple posters. They're banners, I guess is what I mean. And so I've got one that has my picture. It just says, Alana Terry signing books today. I also got a few posters that just have the picture of the covers of my books to have up there. And I have a little, I guess it would be kind of like a tripod sort of thing that I can set a whiteboard up on.
Yep.
And I'll put down information about the book and the price. I've got one of those swipers for my iPhone, and so I can set up credit card. Kind of set it up at the table. I put my banner in front so that people can see the picture and my name, and then I've got the posters with the books, and then the little whiteboard that has a little bit more information about it.
Excellent. Amy, are you about the same, or do you do something differently? I mean, I know you don't do the book signings as much.
I'm thinking my next book signing, I'm just going to put a sign up in a bar that says author will sign books for drinks.
That's
Genius.
perfect. Can you talk to Paul Gink about
a
that?
colorful sign or something helps.
Yeah. By the end of the night, if you can sign, you're all good, right?
Exactly.
And a tip jar right there by you, right? A tip jar.
Yeah, exactly. That's good.
What about you, Cory?
He can't top that one.
Yeah.
I kind of, no. Well, I'm going to ask, if we can talk to Fog Inc. about that bar for the next book. Well, it'll be a children's book, so that might not be that great. But I like to kind of just float around and let people come up to me and sign. And I mean, when we did the release party for Skinny Dipping and the book signing, it was a madhouse. I couldn't see any of the people people that show up, you want to spend time with them and thank them for coming, but it was like a pinball machine the whole night. And so I think I kind of prefer that instead of the sitting behind a table. But I mean, none of us are household names, so it's a different story when you're Neil Gaiman and you have to sit behind a table and just fire off signatures. It's a totally different ballgame. So when you're in was
there a theme and you went in costume, or what was the draw that brought so many people in?
Just word of mouth and marketing campaign, I would say.
The title of the book?
Probably, yeah.
I know I would go.
People like nudity, I suppose. So.
Do you think that that the fan base you've built in other media has led to you having more success as an author?
I do. The funny thing is I think there are so many people out there that are waiting on the album to come out, which has never come out. So I think that kind of, it's created this world of what is Cory going to do next. And so I think I have a lot of museum-type viewers that just kind of want to look at me through glass and see what I'm going to do next. So I think that has, I don't think it would necessarily hurt, but I think you're right. I think it has helped to kind of carry those people through to the next project, because who knows what I'll do next.
I think one of the other things that often authors come out with are a question that even I've asked in the past. Now I'm a little bit different. My books are not for me; they're for other people. So a book signing for me isn't going to work the same way that it would for someone else. But I think one of the things that I've noticed with other authors when I've gone to book signings is that they don't really know if they should focus or if they should, showcase all the books they've written. What is your approach, Alana?
What is my approach?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of going out to anyone, but you can go ahead, Cory.
No, I didn't know if you were still with me or if you were talking to her. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
I like to focus on one book, and what I'll do is have the others there if people ask. I think once What No Sushi becomes a series, it would make sense for me to have all the books in those series. But right now, I've got 3 published books out, but they're different genres, and I think it would be a little just strange to have all of them at once. So all of my signings have been focused on one book, but I'll usually have the others there. For example, yesterday a lady came. She's 3rd generation Japanese. I'm 4th generation. So her parents and grandparents had been in the internment camps. And so we were talking, and eventually she asked me if I had other books. So I showed her my other 2. She left with all 3, which was really cool. But it was the one book with the Japanese-American focus that brought her in. So I think it makes sense, unless, if they're all in the same genre or part of the same series, I don't see why it would be wrong to have more out.
Amy, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, pretty much one book at a time, and I've actually been caught once or twice when somebody asked about another book and I didn't have it with me or didn't have enough copies to give to the people that asked about it. So it's a good idea to have them maybe in reserve, but when you're doing a signing, they're usually there for that one purpose. And something that other authors may also want to consider, I'm just going to throw out there, is that non-traditional book signings. It doesn't have to be in a bookstore. If you can tie your book signing to another event, if your book is about airplanes and you know that the local model airplane club is having a meeting or whatever, a festival, trying to get signings and places like that can help.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Now, Cory, back to you. I apologize for before, but same question to you. How do you approach it? Do you do one thing at a time? I mean, you're a little different in that it's several different media.
I'm big on branding and the image. I'm a bit of a annoying perfectionist with it, but I think everything across the board needs to look clean and professional and match. I think matching is key. Like with us at Book Expo, we had everything matched, all the marketing material matched. Be it the design of your one book that you're promoting. But yeah, I agree with the others that it's key to focus on one thing at a time. Like we brought Perils of Fish Boy to Book Expo America, and we didn't do anything for skinny dipping. We left that aside and just focused on pushing Fish Boy. So I think it's smart. I think that especially today, everything is so loud and so busy, and there's so much static in your face that if you just have one clean product, it's much more soothing to the consumer than to see this chaotic hodgepodge of all these different titles. And so I think that's smart.
Excellent. Now I'm going to open it up again. Jim, John, Rudy, any questions?
Boy, I know I covered what I was asking before, one day ask, so,
Well,
Jim,
John? I have a question because, especially in music, you tend to have what I call an entourage, people that really care about you and follow you and are willing to be there and help out, even on those events where maybe no one else shows up, but they do. And when you're a book author and you're the introvert, you still end up having people around you. And now when you go to a book signing, do you find that they help you, or they're part of the impetus for you to get out there and do it? Do they talk you into it? The circle of friends, in other words, who you really do confide in.
Well, I think that the most important part about those kind of friends is that they're there for buffers, and they can pick up on cues if you get trapped. If you get trapped talking to somebody that you don't want to be talking to, or if it goes from 2 minutes to 10 minutes, you can kind of send those cues, and those people really help, introvert or extrovert, to kind of like continue and get you moving through the next person, and to kind of save you from something very uncomfortable. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Do you find that it's hard to even approach those people? I mean, that's one of the things that I've struggled with. That is, I think that it's not so much that I'm shy, but that I don't like the idea of having to sell myself. And even with people that I'm close to, that that would be considered friends and family, I even have a hard time approaching them. Is that something that you guys struggle with as well?
You mean asking people to help you set up and to be a part of the event?
Yeah.
Well, in our little community in Nashville, our community of creatives, we're very fortunate because we all kind of help each other out. So if I've got a buddy doing a concert, I'll go help him out, and it's kind of, it's not to be expected, but you can count on certain people to always kind of be in your corner and to help you out, and that goes a very, very long way. But it's very karma-like, where you give as much as you can to help others, and then you'll get the same in return.
Amy, do you use the same approach?
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Okay, great. And I guess Alana as well. I mean, do you have people that help you out with yours?
Not as much in the practical, definitely just in, I'll be there, I'll show up. When I did my signing yesterday, I had no idea how many people would be there. It was nice knowing that I had 2 or 3 friends who had already said, we'll be there. One of them had already bought the book, so she wasn't there for that. But knowing I wasn't going to be sitting there totally by myself was really a good feeling. So
that's great. That's great. Now, Rudy, I'm going to throw this out there because you've got a new book, and you're one of those that's going to have the ebook, at least for a little while. Is it something you've considered to go out there and have your book, like a book signing sort of thing, and how would you approach it?
Well, because it is an ebook, like I said, it is very difficult. And again, I feel like the rest of them do. Do they really want my signature, or they want the book? You know, that's what I have to look at. What I have had requests for, like I said, was book clubs that happen to know me or know the family are asking for the book. And I'm actually thinking about going to Staples and having it printed up real quick, you know, which is not the way to do it. But unfortunately, I think the hard copy is still going to be a few months away by going through all the steps we're going through. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'd like to get out there and push it live because I feel that I know what I can do, what I'm capable of. You know, let's face it, for a lot of years I sold Cadillacs to people that really didn't want a Cadillac. But by the time they walked out, they had the Cadillac, you know. And I was told that, what is it, Alana, you're in Alaska?
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you are, Alana?
Yes, yeah.
And I was told by somebody one time I could go to Alaska and sell refrigerators to Eskimos. So, you know, me getting across that way is not a problem. But I have to be able to get that audience. And without a product in hand, and I think that's what John first said in his opening remarks, that without that product, you can't have that. You know, I can't have that audience. Yeah, I can go back into a school and talk about it, but are those kids going to stand in line when the book finally comes out? No, they heard enough already. You know, they're not that way. So yeah, it makes it difficult. You know, yeah, you can get a book out there real fast. You can get a book out there by doing it all yourself, but unfortunately, there are some drawbacks. One of the good things that we have is this Hangout format. Is if I can get onto another Hangout show, and the host asks me about my book and I talk about it, that night my sales go up. You know, so every time I bring it in front of an audience, my sales go up. But unfortunately, unless I go someplace where there is an audience, the sales will slack like everything else. You know, they're just going to fade away after a while. So don't have the answer to that.
I think that's an important point. Well, I think that's a really important point, and I think that's kind of what John was saying earlier when he responded to my question online. I actually posted it on Google Plus just as a comment under something he had posted, and I asked him about book signings. And I think that was one of the points he was making, is that you don't really need the book signing today necessarily if you're not an author that's a known name, but that because there's all these other avenues to go to get the exposure that you would get with a book signing. And in fact, probably a lot more exposure. I mean, how many people are going to watch this show tonight versus how many would show up at your booth to sign a book? And
Correct.
This is just a small show compared to, you know, the other avenues out there. So I think that that's really important for new authors to understand, that even if you're not comfortable going to the book signing, or you don't really have the physical book in hand to do that, there's still other places to go. And I think, for instance, Amy and Cory talking about the Book Expo, those are things that people don't think about as early as they think about the book signing. But that's maybe one of the biggest messages we can get across tonight, that there's other avenues to take today, even if you don't want to go the book signing route.
It's the storytelling, I think, that we forget. It's the human interest stories that we need to find that's associated with our product, our book, or who we are, or what the story's about. And I think that's the thing we forget. What we see most people buy my book, when what we should be saying is read my book. I'd like you to read my book, and also why they should read your book. What is it about your book? I mean, it's great. This whole thing about the internment of the Japanese is great. The whole idea of Cory and his art and all that, and the music he's done, and that I think he's won a Grammy, are great ways to promote his other side of his life. And same with all the writers. We have to find that human interest story and we have to make it different each time we bring it up, because I've seen many profiles here on Google Plus, and you go and look at their feed, and it's the exact same picture and exact same words, just days apart. And you start saying, you know, that's pretty boring. What we have to do is we have to learn that we have to engage. We have to open up the relationship and have something more than say, I got a book. I got a book. You know, I think that's one of the problems.
I do too.
One of the drawbacks I find between on Google or even Facebook, that when you post something, there is such a response from other sources that unless somebody sees it within 10 minutes, it's gone. You know, you have to scroll down so far to find it again, and nobody does that. We all know we look at the last 5, 6 entries, and that's it. You know.
That's why you have to. That's why you have to have a regiment of doing it. You have to use all of them, and you have to have a regiment. You have to put together a sheet of how you're going to do your postings all week long. You have to know what you're going to do, what you're going to talk about. And I'm not talking about those software because I hate them, where you plan it out on Saturday or Sunday and then it puts it out so many days. And I hate those because that's just canned. I want to be able to talk about it at that moment. It takes more time, but I think we gotta do what, so many postings a day, and we gotta make sure we're hitting all the different social media streams that we can. And it's not being a spammer, it's being something that you found interesting. If you write about Rudy, if you write about Cold War stuff going on in the 60s, then you could write about James Bond one day. You could write about, bring up the whole thing with Powers, Gary Powers,
right,
on another article. You can. There's so. What about the day Khrushchev sat there pounding his shoe, at the UN? Those are all interesting articles to bring up and then tie it into your book. That's what we need to do. We need to give an association with it that people will go, oh, instead of saying, I got a book. I got a book, because after a while, it becomes Peter and the Wolf. You know, nobody listens anymore,
right?
Because everybody goes, "Yeah, I know you got a damn book."
I think too, a lot of the success I've had, and I would probably say the same for a lot of you, is been through conversation on social media, rather than just make a post and try to get people to comment. You actually reach out to someone individually.
Yeah, and share their stuff.
What was that whole psychological thing? Like, if you approach a group of 10 people, no one will respond, but if you approach one, they'll respond. And I think that's one of the things that makes people very successful online. I know I've had conversations with Elena on Twitter, and it's ended up bringing other people in simply because I reached out to her. So I think that's always the case. I know we've only got a couple minutes left, but if you guys would like to make a parting statement at all, you're more than welcome. I'll start with you, Alana.
The one thing that I had thought that we didn't talk too much about was the idea of the non-traditional book signings. And I'll just share one thing that I had done for a non-traditional, and that was to hook up with a local charity. They were having a fundraising banquet, and they were trying to raise money for at-risk women facing unplanned pregnancies. And so I brought the story of my son and his medical history and our time in the NICU, and was able to sell it there, giving a significant portion of the proceeds to them. So yeah, I think the idea of going in bookstore and having all your books might be get dated, but to be able to find other venues is a great idea, and to use your creativity to find what matches your book and your personality.
Good.
Nice. Now, Amy, would you like to follow that up at all?
Yeah, I would just like to reinforce what she was saying, and that if you can find where are the people that would like to read the sort of things that you're writing, rather than just letting people know that you have a book out there, because there are so many books out there and people's time, it's limited. They only have so many minutes. So if you can find, for example, if you're writing steampunk, go to steampunk conventions. Don't go where the readers, where general readers are. Find steampunk conventions. If you're writing about wars, are there conventions for people that that research and that are interested in history and wars? So just find where the potential readers are and connect with them, and those are the ones that are most likely to see the value in your writing.
Excellent. And Cory?
I would just reiterate that you need to pay attention to the fan, because the fan is the friend of the artist and the author, and if you're paying attention to them, that's what matters, because they're the ones investing, part of their hard-earned paycheck into what you do. So if you're not touching them on some level and you're not doing something that's interesting to them, then they're throwing away their paycheck. So I think just to pay attention to those that come, and to those that online are following you and want to know more about you, see where their heartbeat is, and try to kind of make sure that you're in tune with what you're putting out there, because Let's face it, that's the point of all of this.
Okay. So I think basically what we have a consensus between all of us that it is not necessarily the term book signing that we're really in favor of, but events where you show your books, like Cory, or even Amy, the show that you went to, the convention. Was that considered a book signing, or just considered a convention, isn't it?
Yeah, Book Expo. Yeah, I didn't do a signing there, actually. I was there with literature, so yeah.
But your results were?
That I would say was very positive.
See, that's what I'm saying. So, and our thing tonight was book signing. So maybe book signing is a thing of the past, unless you are, Raymond Benson, where people know who you are and they want you to sign it as James Bond kind of thing. But other than that, maybe it's not the signature that's very important anymore.
I think we need to think about it as it's a great way to network. That it's a great way to get with different people, different audiences, and to do it as I think that Alana said was the theme. Find the right theme, and as Amy has said, find the right people. And then as Cory has says, get out there and connect with the people, connect with them, step out and connect and engage. And I think that's the beauty of it all. I don't think book signings are dead. I think that they're not the same. I don't think we just sit down at a table and put up a sign and say, I'm signing books today. I think we have to have, I'm signing books, and I'm also going to figure out who's got the best cupcake here today, or whatever it is to bring people in, because there has to be something that now brings them there. We're busy. We live in a new world where we're busy, and it's hard to make time for everything. So,
well, I think what's funny, John, is that and I guess it kind of brings it all together. But before I was a writer, I was a business major, and I, majored in finance. But one of the topics that came up over and over and over again, through the marketing classes and the finance classes and all of it, was the idea of niche. Find your niche, find your niche, depending on how you want to say it. Find that group, and that's what it comes down to. When you're selling a book, you're marketing it, and you need to find the audience that's going to be that's going to respond best. So I think that's funny that it kind of keeps coming up over and over and over again.
I think that go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that, unless you're that household name, the only person that an autograph really matters to is kids, children, and they get that star in their eye when they see somebody that's done something that they don't understand how they do it, be it write a book, illustrate a book. And so I think that if you're writing children's book, I think that signings are still very valuable, even if you aren't a household name. Because, when I saw Michael Jordan 20 feet away, or when I saw John Elway 30 feet away, like there's nothing on earth that compared to that. Not saying we're Jordan or Elway, but just saying that thing that happens in children when they see somebody that they can look up to. And so I think that that's still a very strong thing, is kids love autographs.
Okay. I'll buy that.
Yeah, I hate to do this, guys, but we're at the 8 o'clock hour, so maybe at this point we wrap up the show live, but you guys are more than welcome to hang around, and we'll have a hangout afterwards for anyone that wants to chat more. Rudy, is there anything you wanted to say to finish the show tonight?
Well, yeah, I didn't get to say it last week because I went over my time. I just like on 60 Minutes, I like to give a little bit of a speech at the very end, just to get my vocals kind of cooled off, And this week I thought a lot about what I wanted to actually say. And here's the thing that I'm looking at right now. As each week goes by and SlushHeap gets a little better, matures, we gather more and more friends. And what I'm noticing, I'm starting to pick up more and more people who are like me, teller of stories, not authors. And I like that, Not that there's anything wrong with tellers of stories, but it made me look back in time. And if you agree, no matter which theory you agree with about early man, for a long time we didn't have a language. All we had was grunts and groans, which us men still have today, So we didn't get out of that system. But the next step we got was speech. And we learned to communicate with each other and also with ourselves, talking to ourselves. The next thing we learned art. We put pictures in cave walls and try to tell our future generations what it was all about when we were old men. But, it was long before the written word was invented. And, of course, with the written word came the honey-do list, my favorite, But we passed our thoughts, our history, and our feelings about life on by being oral about it. In other words, just like the Native Americans did in 1800 still, they told their stories to their children, not in writing, but they actually would recite it and make them memorize it. But as humans, we were never satisfied. So we went on and we learned a written language. And first on stone tablets, then on animal skins, and finally on paper. And, I guess the saying is true. Yes, you've come a long way, babe. But, I don't think we're finished yet. Nowadays we don't even have to type anymore. We just speak into a microphone and the computer types our words for us. But, what that brings me to is that the one thing that paper cannot do is put feeling to it, unless you read it with feeling. When we speak orally, we can put feeling into it and make you feel like you're really there. And so I have decided, you know what, I'm going to keep my medieval mode and speak words that form in my tongue. And, I will pass on my history as long as others will listen. At least this way, I can be comfortable to say that no man will try to correct me for my misspelling or my wrong punctuation. And that is the thought of my day. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have a great night.
Good night.
Thanks for being here tonight.